If We Were Giants, Chapter 4. As she trudged up the steep slope with her father, Kira scanned the hillside's thickets of brush and jumbles of rock formations. Even though she had approached from the outside multiple times now, her trained eye simply could not find the hidden entrance. Was it there? By the sagebrush and the... No, that was just a trick of the shadow and light. Kira held a hand above her eyes to block out the sun and squinted as she made her way up the volcano wall. Could it be over there, behind that gnarled scrub pine? Maybe, but then why wasn't... Gotcha! Kira let out a squeal as she was grabbed around the waist. She spun around to find her friend Tattoo, who had slipped out of a crack in the hillside surrounded by a clump of thorny bushes. The girl threw back her head and laughed, her unruly nest of hair flopping all over. The look on your face gets better every time. Kira placed a hand over her racing heart and blew out a stream of air. If you keep doing that, I might just stop coming home altogether. Girls, hush now. Kuzu, one of the official watchers at this post, peeked his head out of the narrow opening in the rock wall and shook a finger at Tattoo. A good helper should know better. Come inside. He beckoned them forward and nodded at Kira's father. Welcome back, Taro. You must be glad to be safely home after your travels. Taro made a fist and touched it to his forehead. Zidu provides, he said, getting in greeting. As Kira slipped through the crack and made her way through the twisting tunnel carved into the rock, she once again marveled at how so many Zidunians, even the grown-ups, seemed intimidated by the prospect of going outside. It gave her a little thrill of self-satisfaction to know that she had seen things that few of them ever would. But as she emerged from the tunnel onto the ledge inside the volcano crater, she had to admit it was good to be back home. One of the benefits of traveling outside was being able to see Zidu through the fresh eyes whenever she returned, and feelings of awe and pride reawakened each time. The morning sunlight filtered through the opening far above, softly illuminating the intricate levels of terraces that made up their concealed community. Dozens of great overlapping ridges carved into the rock rose over her head and fell away beneath her like a giant spiral staircase. Some had groupings of huts for the various clans in little villages, others supported land for crops or livestock or places of gathering, and far below, at the very bottom of the volcano's interior, was a pool of fresh spring water that served as the lifeblood of the community. But Kira didn't have time to dwell on the amazing architectural accomplishments of countless generations of Zedoan people because Tico spotted her right away. He must have been scoping out the hidden entrance since sunup, waiting all morning for their return. Kira! He raced over and tugged at her cloak. How was the outside this time? He asked eagerly. Oh, she shrugged as casually as possible. It was pretty good, I guess. Kira faked a big yawn. Stop teasing. Tico put his hand on his hips. Was it amazing? Tell me. Kira broke into a grin. You got me. It was completely amazing. She gave him a sly, sidelong glance. I caught a squirrel this time. Wow, let me see it. Tico dove for the pouch tied to her belt, grabbing at it with both hands. Kira pushed his arm away. I didn't have it anymore. I felt bad for taking it from its home, so I let it go. Tico crossed his arms and huffed. You didn't catch any squirrel. Kira's grin got wider. So that means you believe they do exist? No. If I get another one, do you want me to bring it back? Yes. They both laughed. Tico looked over at where their father was still talking to Kuzo at the entrance and lowered his voice to a whisper. Did you talk to him about me going with you next time? Kira tousled his hair affectionately. One of the things she admired about her brother was that he didn't share the usual Zidonian fare of everything beyond the crater walls. Tico was dying to get outside someday. With Tico, you know he won't even think about it until you get to helper age. His shoulders slumped. It's not fair. Kira glanced back at Taro, still tied up in conversation. But I did bring something that might cheer you up. Really? What is it? Chico was back at her, jumping up like a puppy. Show me. She laughed and untied the pouch. First, I got you a little treat. She pulled out a sack of honeyed nuts, which he accepted eagerly. Hide those for Mama, or she'll only let you have 2 or 3 at a time. Oh, I will. Thanks, Kira. And I brought you something else. She glanced around conspiratorially. If you can keep a really big secret. Tico's eyes went wide. No way, he breathed. You found more? Kira nodded. She reached back into the pouch and slowly removed her fist. With a dramatic flourish, learned from watching her storyteller father, she unfurled her fingers to reveal the 3 rough arrowheads she found while walking next to a creek. Kira dropped the gifts into Tico's open palm, and he went silent as he studied them. War and weapons were foreign concepts in Zidu. The only knowledge of battle their people had was from the stories Taro told around the cook fires when they visited the various clans in the community. Kira knew these stories were meant to be cautionary tales, examples of what could happen to their society if they stopped cooperating. But the taboo nature of the subject had the opposite effect on Tico and his friends. They were fascinated with all the epic battles that no doubt must be raging somewhere outside, and they secretly played Zudonian warrior when no grown-ups were looking. He lifted the biggest arrowhead and turned it this way and that. These are incredible. Thank you so much, Kira. She gave him a stern look. Now, you'd better hide those even better than you do the treats. Understand? Or we'll both be in trouble. Tico nodded reverently. Then his face lit up. I have the perfect place. My secret spot. Come with me. I'll show you. Kira called to her father. I'll look after Tico. We'll be home in time for lunch. Tara waved at her, and she hustled to join her brother. She smirked at the idea of a secret spot. Pretty much every nook and cranny of the volcano's interior had been mapped out years ago. Nothing was truly hidden in Zidu. There simply wasn't enough room for secrets. They neared the end of the ledge where they had entered the volcano's interior. Tico ran past the stone staircase carved into the crater wall. There were many ways other than the stairs to get from one broad terrace to another. You could rappel down on climbers' ropes or take the crane-powered wooden elevator, but Tico preferred to. Woo! He yelled as he leaped straight off the edge and plunged to a cushion of moss and leaves waiting below. Kira rolled her eyes. Yet she had to admit as she made the same jump that it was fun to feel her stomach flip-flop as her body rushed through the open air. She popped up from the soft pile and had to jog to keep pace with Tico as they circled the volcano's towering walls, heading to his hideaway. Kira waved to people as they rushed past. There was Mina, one of her old teachers, playing with a group of small children in front of her hut. And there was Samos, who delivered fresh milk each morning from the goat pens, and a group of builders and their helpers patching up a suspension bridge that spanned 2 prominent terraces. It was comforting to watch the Zidonians care for their home and for one another. As Kira got older, she took in more details about how the community functioned. Everything was in balance. Her people lived in harmony with each other and the resources that the volcano provided. Tico had clambered up a series of staircases until he was more than three-fourths of the way to the rim of the crater. Kira, not well rested from her all-night journey in the cart, found herself wheezing as she tried to keep pace. She looked up to see her brother beckoning to her. He had stopped at the base of one of the courier zipline stations. By the time she made it up to that terrace, Tico had flopped on the ground, panting, and was watching the couriers. The station, one of six evenly paced around the interior of Zidu, was a wooden platform up on 8-foot supports. Zipline cables radiated out like spokes of a wheel, connected to various terraces clear across the other side of the volcano. A Zordonian citizen who needed to send something to a different clan brought it to the station and dropped it off. Then a courier put it in a pouch, secured themselves in a harness, attached to a zip line, and stepped off the platform that extended right out over the lip of the terrace, hundreds of feet above the ground below. The result was an exhilarating ride through the air to the delivery spot. Chico watched, rapt, as other courier stepped off into nothingness, and in mere seconds was no bigger to the eye than a dot, zooming halfway across the vast volcano. Kira sat down and nudged Tico. That would be the perfect job for someone I know. It would be fun, Tico admitted, but you know I want to be a builder. They sat there for a moment, catching their breath. Well, Kira finally said, as she looked around, aren't you going to take me to your hiding place? Tico put his finger to his lips. He was watching the activity on the platform closely. We have to wait until they're all busy. A few moments later, a man climbed the steps and approached a helper, while another helper assisted a courier with her harness straps. There were no other couriers or helpers to take notice of the two kids down below. Tico jumped up, grabbed Kira's hand, and pulled her underneath the wooden stairs. They raced along below the courier platform, made it to the rock wall where the structure was secured, and then Tico wedged himself into a crack in the wall and disappeared. Kira was impressed. Tico had actually managed to find a hidden nook, and the positioning of the courier station would keep prying eyes away from it. Clever. When she followed him into the sort of cave that formed a little room, she was even more impressed. Using materials that was clearly left over from various construction projects, he and his friends had built tables and chairs, a couple of hammocks, and even a target board for a game of Raleigh darts. Wow, Tico, this is nice. The builders would be crazy not to take you when you're old enough. Thanks. Tico beamed at the praise. It took us forever to sneak in all the supplies. He stood on tiptoe to retrieve a wooden box from a little shelf of rock and stashed his arrowheads inside. It's been easier lately because all the grown-ups are getting ready for the Harvest Festival. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Kira had been away a little longer than she realized. I never forget about that. It's my favorite time of year. You like it more than your birthday? Way more. The grown-ups are always so busy during the day, and then they go to bed early and sleep hard all night. Us kids can do whatever we want. Kira smiled and shook her head. She should have known. Tico tugged on her cloak again. Now tell me all about your adventures this time. Don't leave anything out. And no teasing. Kira laughed. I promise. They cuddled up in one of the hammocks, and she told him everything she could remember. When she listed the animals Pa had pointed out to her as they hiked along, Tico peppered her with questions about the beasts they'd had to hide from, especially the crocodiles. She told him about a place on the riverbank where the water was so wide you could hardly see the other side. She described what it was like to almost lose yourself in a real forest. She reported on what the kids were wearing in distant villages, along with what games they were playing. When she finally tired of answering all of Tico's eager questions, she yawned and stretched. We should be getting back. I know Ma will want to know where we are. Tico grumbled a bit before reluctantly agreeing. Then they stuck out from under the courier platform and made their way home. The huts were arranged in a semicircle that formed a courtyard where the children could be watched by all of the parents in their clan. Kira became a bit nostalgic for the times before she was a helper, when there were countless hours to play out here with all her friends. The courtyard was empty at midday, however, with everyone either off at school or doing their jobs around the community. Maybe she could sneak in a nap before. Kira! Her mother burst from the hut and came straight for her. You're here! You're safe! Dejana grabbed Kira in a fierce hug, pulled back, and held her by the shoulders to steady her face, then hugged her tightly again. You are safe. Wow, Kira knew Ma was perpetually nervous when her daughter was on the outside, but this welcome seemed different somehow, a little more frantic than usual. Kira looked over her shoulder at Tico, let her tongue hang out from the side of her mouth, and made a face like she was being suffocated to death. Yes, Ma, she croaked. Tico giggled. Tara stepped out from the hut, and Kara glanced over at him. She furrowed her brow. Pa was usually very relaxed after returning home, but right now his eyes looked clouded with concern. Was something going on? Dejana finally stopped hugging Kira so tightly, but she still held on to her daughter's shoulders as she stepped back to steady her. Oh my, you look thin, my dear. When was the last time you ate? Were you warm enough at night? She glanced at her spouse. Tara, why is she covered in grime? Don't you ever make sure she washes when you go wandering about? I know for good and certain that there are plenty of lakes and streams on the outside. Has no other village managed to invent soap? All is well, Maha, Kira said. Jana studied her eyebrows scrunched up. Sometimes I worry that you are becoming just as good as your father at telling stories. That's the plan, Ma. Jana finally broke into a smile and hugged her again. I suppose it is. Come in, there's some stew left over. I'll warm it up for you. Kira and Tika walked into the hut. Tara put a comforting arm around Dejana as they followed. Her mother was whispering, but Kira could still make out the words. You promised that no one saw the two of you. No one who shouldn't have? Tara whispered in return, his tone pleasant. No, my love, it was a good trip. Very successful. He nodded in Kira's direction. You would be proud of our daughter. She is learning quickly. Someday she will be a fine storyteller. Kira's heart glowed with the recognition from her father, but it was short-lived, as she couldn't help but think that something was not quite right between her parents. Lunch was served, and the family talked and laughed and reveled in being reunited once again. But Kira kept an eye on her parents. The little secret glances they gave each other, the sleep circles under Pa's eyes, the worry lines around Maha's eyes, and the way her mouth, usually so smiley, kept turning down at the corners. Kira sighed. Grown-ups. They always thought they were being so secretive, but they never were. When would they realize kids weren't stupid? Kira decided she'd find out exactly what was going on.